Welcome to the Greatest Movies of All Time podcast. Normally, our theme song would be running right about now with our pre-show banter being mixed over the top of it. That is still going to happen in just a moment, but I wanted to give a little introduction to this episode because episode 6, The Panic Room Game, was marred with a number of audio technical issues. Our interns have worked on it tirelessly for the last few weeks trying to get everything salvaged and fixed. They were able to salvage about 88% of the episode. So as a result, I'll be cutting in as your audio guide 1 or 2 times just to let you know where we're at and where we're going with the episode. Fill in any of the holes, if you will. We thought about maybe just re-recording this whole thing, but these episodes, as our longtime listeners know, are a matter of audio record. We make decisions about which films are the greats and which ones are not. We also play our games at the end where each of us, myself, Gabriel, and JB, earn points that are used to champion a film. All those things happened so that we could not do a redo, if you will. So instead, we will present what we have, and I will fill in what we have missed, so everything can continue as it has. Speaking of which, because of these technical issues, we will also be releasing episode 7, Wet Hot American Summer, in the next day following this episode going live. Wanted to give you a double feature to address the somewhat shortcomings of this episode as well. And that episode is pretty zany. We take our first attempt, maybe our last, we'll see, at role-playing as some of the characters from the film. But that'll wait till the next episode. Until then, I'm about to cue our intro music, and we'll see you guys on the other side.
We're recording.
Oh, there it is. I gotta see Crawl.
Nine out of 10 mothers recommend the greatest movies of all time.
I'm a Pinterest sad man.
Don't tempt me with a good time. It's all about getting the pins.
Welcome to the Greatest Movies of All Time podcast. I am one of your anointed ones, Jesse. I'm along with Gabriel.
Hello.
And
folks.
JB.
Hey, everyone.
How are you guys doing today?
I can't complain. I mean, there are things I could complain about, but I don't really see the point of doing so now.
I can't think of one single thing in the world to complain about right now. Or is it the opposite? But in the meantime, we can talk about some movies amongst all the other sadness and craziness that's happening in the world.
Ridiculousness.
Yeah. We're the Greatest Movies of Podcast. This is what we do. We open up political windows and then we quickly transition to talking about films. And that's what we'll be doing today. We're going to talk about a couple movies, some greats, some not so greats. We'll talk about it. We'll vote on it. And we'll kind of help in the discussion about whether certain movies are one of the greatest of all time or not. In the meantime, we also might do some silly bets. Who knows? We'll just see where it goes. Are you guys ready to dive in today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If ever, a little bit of housekeeping, if you ever need to get a hold of us, 2 things I want to say. It's been major faux pas on my part. Our music has been supplied to us, our intro, our outro music for, we're on like episode 6, 7. We're somewhere in that ballpark, guys. You're keeping track of it. But Daniel Padge, I think it's number 6 for sure. I'm checking on the interns. They're holding up signs that say 6.
God bless his interns.
Daniel Padgett and his SoundCloud, Padge55, soundcloud.com/Padge55. I did want to give him at the top of the show instead of the end of the show. He did make the music for our show, and we thank him for that.
Thank you.
So that's number 1. And number 2, if you do want to reach out to us, we are available at greatestmoviespodcast@gmail.com. Tell us a great, and maybe we'll bring it up to the panel and see what we decide.
A future
But in the
episode.
meantime, have you guys seen anything not so great lately as we kind of start in films that aren't ever going to be brought up to the debate table, but still worth talking about.
JB, what you got this week?
Dude. Episode 2, Clone Wars.
Right. We're going to let you jump in. For a minute there, I thought you were going to say, dude, where's my car? But
I would never put Dude, Where's My Car in a not so great. I wouldn't put it in a great. I might just put it right in the it's a film category. It's a classic.
all right.
mean,
Sorry. Listen, some people might think it's great, but
the drive-through scene, brilliant. The 2 minutes of them just asking where their car is, never before has it been done in cinematic history. That's like Casablanca status.
Sure,
Yeah.
it's precedent. Sure.
Yeah.
Hal Sparks, and I'll end on Hal Sparks and Hal Sparks cameo in that film. But anyway, go on.
Yeah, Clone Wars.
IMDb him, guys. Hal Sparks. Clone Wars, episode 2.
I think Clone Wars was definitely a definite OTW, and for the people tuning in for the first time this week, that is a one-time watch. Watched it when I was a child. It was one of those coming of age films when I was coming of age, and it was the Star Wars I grew up on. And even the newest episodes are so much better. The graphics suck. It was cool to see Yoda do some badass shit with his Force hands, and that might bring the ratings up to the podcast, a little bit of vulgarity, but you got to be edgy. It's Yoda. Very melodramatic teenage rom-com vibes on top with the Padme Anakin love.
Is this the one where with the line "Anakin, you're breaking my heart"? Or is that in episode 3?
No, that is episode 3. That's Revenge of the Sith. Yeah.
That's all right.
I would have
then
no
I got
idea.
then I got nothing for you.
Oh man, no. Oh god, yeah. This,
you know what?
This is hands down the worst. This is the worst Star Wars film.
Right?
Yes.
It's awful.
It's worse than Phantom Menace.
Yes.
Yeah. By leaps and bounds. And
Wow.
when I say leaps and bounds, I mean the literal CGI leaps and bounds that look like the shittiest video game you've ever played. Like that when they're in that weird factory.
Coliseum.
Yeah, and it's just no.
I will say, the redemption there is that Ewan McGregor looks older in that movie than he does now.
Like now in Dr. Sleep, yeah.
Yeah, like Ewan McGregor is ageless. So, amazing.
So what? Quick question: what brought you to episode 2? Like, I'll be honest.
It was one of my favorite movies. Yeah, what were you saying?
No. I'm just curious. Like, who jumps in at number 2? I like a couple, maybe 10 years ago. I revisited 1, 2, and 3.
There was the TV show, the cartoon. It was wrapping itself up, and I never watched it. So I figured, I'm going to continue to not watch it, but I'll watch this movie instead, which has the same name and birthed this cartoon. And I vividly remember as a kid, like the massive fight scenes at the end, feeling this catharsis of like, oh my God, the Jedis are coming together. There's this massive, the clones are on the Jedi side for maybe the only time in Star Wars history. And then I watched it, last week, and it was just terrible.
Yeah.
I think that brings, but isn't that kind of the argument you hear sometimes? Like, I mean, I'm not a Star Wars enthusiast, but I'm not a Star Wars hater either. Slightly different in our ages, I guess. Like the original Star Wars, what episodes 4, 5, and 6,
4, 5, and 6.
Is what I grew up on as a young kid and loved those and saw those. Have had no real connection with any of the other 6 films. Was excited for Phantom Menace to come out. I remember waiting in line to see it in the theater. I remember the frenzy to get your tickets to see it. But then almost kind of just participating in those 3 films, the prequels, as just an exercise of obligation. And not really really loving it. And I'll be honest, I think episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, I enjoyed the most, if what I remember. But kind of my point in here, but people say, but George Lucas was trying to make kind of kids films in some way, and kind of missing the mark that, like, it's interesting to me that you, JB, say, like, hey, as a kid, I love this film. But then as us, as emerging adults and beyond, there's also this piece of we felt our childhood destroyed or by his new creations.
I don't think I went into it and felt like I had been violated in some way.
And you hear some people like the extreme fanboys of like, you've ruined it.
Yeah. Quick correction. This episode 2 was Attack of the Clones.
It's Attack of the Clones. I realized that too halfway through.
You're right.
But I completely understand.
For our Patreons who got the live feed, they got that correction.
That's right.
Thank you. They get the live feed.
But yeah, like of those 3 films, like those 3 in my mind are hands down like the worst of the 9 made in the Skywalker saga, right? I think even though the 3 most recent films, despite how some people feel about them, I still think they are far better made. The best thing to happen to those was that Lucas relented control, and allowed other people who kind of grew up on those films and had visions around how they might continue that story to sort of take that and run with it. I mean, we talked about Rian Johnson, when we spoke about Knives Out.
One of the greats.
Yeah. And even, even The Last Jedi, which I think a lot of people pan heavily, I still think that's a better story than any of those episodes 1 through 3. But I agree with Jesse. I still think of those 3, the most solid is episode 3, Revenge of the Sith.
Man, I can't imagine how many people heard me say Clone Wars and thought immediately, this guy's a loser. Why is he on this podcast?
No, listen, we all went there. We all went there. We know what you mean.
Yeah, no, it happens. It's very confusing because, to your point, right? There was an entire 2 series now. Are there 2 series that were made about the Clone Wars?
I don't even know.
Because there was the original Cartoon Network one, and then I think there was another series.
Yeah. Guys, send your corrections to Greatest Movies.
I thought they were the same thing. So if the fans are right about that one, my bad.
There's an animated film, and then there's the animated series Clone. I'm sure Star Wars fanboys are going to crush us on this. But
oh man,
whatever.
Email us in. Yeah.
Right, but rebellions are built on hope, so we're all good.
All right, gentlemen. It's time for the Panic Room game. The Panic Room game. Today's episode all about the game and Panic Room as we continue our David Fincher journey to figure out which of his are the greats.
It's our second foray into the realm of Fincher.
Round 2, a quick previously on the Greatest Movies of All Time podcast. We talked 7, we talked Fight Club. 7 we decided would be referred to as one of the greats. It was not, let the record show, it was not a unanimous vote, but it was majority. So today,
wait, did we decide this? I thought did we decide
Fight 7 was not. Did I say 7?
You said 7.
Man, maybe it was just me trying to put what I wanted. No, Fight Club, one of the greats. 7, not one of the greats.
Correct.
How about the game?
Let's talk about the game.
Michael Douglas,
Sean Penn.
This followed 7.
Yes. I somehow, in my memory, transposed this in Fight Club and thought that, or actually this in Panic Room. I thought somehow Panic Room was, and then the game came after.
See, it's funny. I always switch 7 and the game. I always feel that like the game came first, then the 7.
No, I always remember 7 was the featured film debut. But
yeah, post Alien 3, let's do 7. Like the real David Fincher first film.
But yeah, no, the game is an interesting premise. I think it kind of falls apart if you think about it a bit too much. It involves this elaborate conspiracy, right? Which is the game. I think it has like elements of the short story, The Most Dangerous Game, as well as this broader notion of that we've seen in multiple short stories or films of taking someone who seemingly has everything and stripping all of that away and what do they have left to live for, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they arrive at this understanding of, oh wow, I should start living my life. I think that that's the synopsis.
It's a wonderful life. Is what it is.
So much grittier. It is the darkest version of It's a Wonderful Life I've ever seen. Yes.
No, that is the film. Only my kind of back history with this. This was, I think, young college kid, maybe my freshman year. I had taken an intro to film class, and the game wasn't on my radar as of whatever. It had come out that weekend. I think I remember the professor getting up in there in the room, and it was one of those like, "There's a movie called The Game. You need to go watch it this weekend." And went and saw it, and really liked it. Obviously, I think Michael Douglas was wonderful. Michael Douglas, obviously an actor I was aware of at that point, but it kind of, I liked it so much that I think one of Michael Douglas's following movies was A Perfect Murder. Not a great thriller, but I loved The Game so much and Michael Douglas in it that it was opening night, A Perfect Murder. I was there. Just to support Mr. Douglas.
Yeah, no, Michael Douglas is he's terrific in this film. He really is the linchpin of the film. Like if he doesn't give the performance he gives, the entire thing I think falls apart, because every other character revolves around his either reaction to them or his initial, interaction with them. Right.
No, he plays like it's not quite Gordon Gecko.
Gordon Gecko. Yeah, but it feels
Wall Street,
very similar.
But he's in that same realm, and that's what's so great about him. He's this guy who has everything, like you said, has it all put together. But then you can see him trying to hold everything together while he's crumbling. While everything around him is kind of crumbling, his sanity's crumbling. But Douglas does such a great job of just keeping it together enough for the outside, but when he has those brief moments of breaking, the anxiety he carries feels very authentic and just makes it believe. Never at one point do you not believe how caught up he is in this situation.
JB, I'm curious because Jesse and I are a little bit older. And so I think we saw this film pretty early on around when it was released. I'm just curious what your thoughts are here, because
and for the listeners, Gabriel and I are both 76 years old.
That's right. 70. I've been 76 for 20 years now.
I just turned 12. Got a few hairs on my body. A little confused about it. And speaking about the movie, it was interesting that David Fincher created another movie that was like white collar thriller. Makes me think about how that, speaking about Fight Club, we talked about how that was largely played upon white collar frustrations and anxieties. And in this movie, it's not necessarily playing on those frustrations and anxieties, but there is this essence of like the backdrop of being in white collar is a huge plot point. And it's made me reflect and even think about other movies where that's a huge thing, and representation of where's the blue collar thrillers, where's the movie about plumbers and electricians and HVAC technicians. Makes me think about that. Being a little younger, it doesn't hit as hard. It might just be the graphics, you get spoiled by HD 1080p on everything. I might just be spitting out words, but sometimes that's what the YouTube says. So
no, it's true. I think when we get to the Panic Room, there's even some of that in Fincher's direction and his heavy reliance on some CGI for his long pans.
But yeah, the panning shots. let's table that.
I think another interesting point with just thinking about the context of this podcast and where we started, I sort of chose Star Wars because I was thinking Forrest Whitaker, but I didn't want to watch Rogue One because I think that might be one of the greats, and I want to put that in the not great category. So I chose one that was clearly not great. And it's interesting that the game sort of, I think, maybe fits in with the idea of a game as like Jumanji. So I made that little connection. But I don't really have much to say about the movie. It wasn't a memorable watch for me. But
not to interrupt you, which is interesting because I think kind of speaking to Gabriel's like kind of just slight generational shift between us. Because I think one of the things that was so big, at least for me in the game when this came out, was this idea of, oh, it's so memorable, and the fact that it's one of those. We've talked about this before. This era of filmmaking almost that I kind of got to go back and rewatch this to see if it works. And it does hold up on multiple rewatches, and how meticulous it was in putting together. But at the same time, in kind of a modern lens, it's sort of like the issue with the movie Us. If you start really thinking about it and start talking about it, none of it holds up.
I feel like this one, right? We talked a little bit about Fight Club being, it's really, really dark satire, right? And with this, it feels like you're dealing in some sort of allegory, right? That's the perspective I take in what. So it's funny, right? For the longest time, in my mind, I thought this was like the Fincher film.
Same,
right? I own the Criterion Collection.
It has a Criterion collection edition, almost cements it as a great.
Right. I own the Criterion Collection Blu-ray of this. I've watched the special features. Like I have this understanding of kind of what he was doing, what he was trying to do, and how at the time, right, like this was a pretty dark like place for film to go in that like late 90s kind of era. It felt innovative in the way it was shot. Again, watching it, 20 years, watching it 21 years later.
Yeah.
It does have a very different feel. I think, effects wise and visually, it holds up. Particularly in that higher resolution and in a curated, version of the film. But yeah, it does have its holes, right? And it felt harder for me to feel a connection to the film than it did initially, because of just it's like, wow, I see people now talking about conspiracy theories and all this bullshit, and it's like, how hard would it be to orchestrate like every single interaction in a human being's life to then flip their life completely upside down, right? At some point, that has to fall apart. Like that's almost impossible, right? The suspension of disbelief required to watch this film and thoroughly enjoy it, I think, is a lot to ask of any viewer. And so that's where I turn to that, like, oh no, this is allegory. This is about the notion of having everything. It's about not appreciating the life and the people in your life around you, and isolating yourself away from those relationships that provide that richness that life is supposed to offer.
Yeah, and we saw kind of some similar points said to about Seven, which the film that butts up against this.
Okay, audio listeners, I told you I'd be cutting in. This is your audio guide for this episode. Just real quick, we wrapped up our conversation about the game. We lost a few minutes at the end there, and we segued quickly into talking about the Panic Room. So now we're speaking of the Panic Room. Our conversation started. We're about 2 minutes in here. JB and myself were playfully comparing some of the elements and circumstances of The Panic Room to the classic film Home Alone.
Like I made the joke about It's a Wonderful Life for the game, this is kind of Home Alone.
Right. That's what it felt like. It felt like we're going to give Macaulay Culkin a parent in the same house, a safety vault, and the stakes are higher. You know, there's flamethrowers and dragons. Not really. Don't watch the movie and expect those things. But it's like a high stakes adult Home Alone.
I'm going to respectfully disagree.
Yes, let's hear it.
I'm gonna.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, our first spicy episode.
I'm gonna jump in here, and I'm gonna say this is Fincher's first film where he actually delivers a strong female character. He delivers on not only a single strong female character, but two. One being a child. Their reaction and their response to this home invasion, right? I think it shows a lot of gall. It shows a lot of ingenuity. It shows a lot of calm, despite the fact that they seem afraid, right? But there's so much thought that gets put into the way they react to the home invasion itself, right? The fact that Jodie Foster, her bedroom is right. It's butted up against the panic room. She recognizes the threat, runs to take her daughter out of a space that is clearly unsafe in the home, right? And get her into that panic room. Once they're in the panic room, they're faced with threat after threat, like the propane tank, the reaction to that, then calmly thinking to just reverse that threat against the predators, right? They both have, like, this film passes the Bechdel test. I don't know if there are any other fucking David Fincher films that pass the Bechdel test, but this one does. And it has strong female leads. It has those really neat Fincher-esque shots, right? That pan from small things into even smaller things and then come back large. Dwight Yoakam is fantastic. I think Jared Leto, one of David Fincher's favorite things to do is destroy Jared Leto's face. We saw that in Fight Club. We see it again here. I think.
He tells him cornrows is a good idea.
Yeah, here, bro. Put some cornrows in, and then also we're gonna make sure that flame manages to find its way into your face.
Have your face melt off.
This is the first. Sorry, it's not the first, but this is the second Fincher film that now features a prominent character of color, right? Forrest Whitaker's character is extremely sympathetic. He's the only one of the three home invaders who has a moral compass. I don't think this is a throwaway film. I think this is a really important film. I think it's well made, and I think there are one or two things they get wrong along the way from a technical perspective. But this was so much more engrossing on a third or fourth watch. I don't remember how many times I've seen this film, and I even watched it on a DVD. It was a DVD. That's the copy I have. I didn't have a Blu-ray. I didn't bother to like
Showtime HD.
Yeah, I don't have Showtime. But it's still visually, I found it to be captivating. The acting I thought was fantastic. I thought the writing and I'm sold on this film as being a really solid Fincher film.
Yeah, I'll say this. I kind of opened up, obviously, with kind of my feelings when this film came out. I leaps and bounds like it, appreciate it, was into it much more than I thought. In some ways, I'm happy I had this span of time between viewings. It really felt like a a new watch. Even though I really knew kind of where this was going, I kind of remembered most of the things. This also speaks to how memorable it was. I'll say this about the female strong leads. I agree. I think Jodie Foster is amazing in it. My only kind of complaint there is he should have followed through with it to the very end.
No, absolutely.
There is some bad choices at the end to kind of really just cement that as like it could have played out a slightly different way.
Yes.
But with that being said, that I kind of think hurts that a little bit. But that being said, I think every actor in this is phenomenal. I think obviously Forrest Whitaker, Dwight Yoakam, those guys are, Dwight Yoakam just he's terrifying, and he plays it so well.
I don't think I'd ever seen Dwight Yoakam in a film. I think is this his acting debut? I've not done the research.
Neither, but if it hadn't, he has definitely not done anything as menacing as this. And even Jared Leto, I think it's easy to hate on him, but because of a lot of his things, I think he starts really, really strong in the film, and I think he does his character wanes, and you get a little tiresome of him. I think he's inconsistent throughout his reactions at times. But I still really like him in the film.
I think that was one of the smartest decisions in the film. Like he's clearly a liar. He's playing his two accomplices against one another, right? And they make a choice way earlier than you expect in the film to get rid of his character.
Spoiler alert.
This movie is 21 years old.
Yeah, we try to avoid some stuff. We never do like big endings to see how it goes, but no, it's Jared Leto does not see the film all the way to the end.
No, but that to me, that choice, right? That choice to take that character out of the picture, and then you take the two opposite ends of his morality, right? Because he's firmly planted in the center. The Raoul character, played by Dwight Yoakam, is on the far right.
Oh yeah,
right, and the Forrest Whitaker character is further left, right? He doesn't want to harm anyone. He doesn't want any. His whole motive for any of this, right, is that he's struggling to take care of his family.
Yeah.
Right. He wants to make sure his child is taken care of and his wife is taken care of, and that's his motivation. And everything starts. The entire premise of their invasion is built on a lie or misinformation. It's that no one is in that home.
No, I agree. No, Forrest is great. The character is great. I think all their motivations are spot on. I think all the character development, I think all of it's just so well thought of. I think even the way it's shot with Fincher, you mentioned, even though it's a little CGI dated and you can tell this was made on a computer, the long pan at the beginning of the movie, I think the first 20 or 30 minutes of this film is perfect. It's almost textbook, perfect, suspenseful movie making, where Jodie Foster's a little drunk. She's going to sleep. She can't figure out her alarm. And then the camera just leaves her bed and it goes downstairs. And then it goes to the door where they're trying to open the door. And then, you see the invaders coming, and then they go to the window and the camera just doesn't stop. And it's following them from window to window around the whole house. It cuts across the house. That's where the CG piece really comes in, cuts through like the kitchen table. And those as they're first entering the home, and when it's setting up the whole dilemma of them getting in the panic room, I think from beginning to that moment when the panic room shuts for the first time when they're in there, I think that is filmmaking at its best. I think it's untouchable by anyone. And I think I was watching it and I'm like, oh, Fincher grew up. Like he fine-tuned everything he was doing.
It really felt like hey, I know what I did well in those handful of prior films.
Yeah, you saw a little bit of Fight Club in there. You saw a little bit of the game in there. You saw a little bit of Seven in there. You saw it all, and then there's the piece, and then there's just that was my thing. Is this one of the great thrillers of all time? Is what I'm thinking as much, because also everything it reminded me of that Radiohead song a little bit, like everything in its perfect place or whatever. Everything in its right place, whatever it is. Like everything in the movie, everything he shows you, every shot has a purpose. Yes. I'm going to show you this phone charger because it's going to come into play 45 minutes later. I'm going to show you this fire blanket because it's going to come and play later. Yeah. I'm going to show you that she didn't set her alarm. Like there's nothing that's just there for show. Every shot is thought about.
The only thing they get wrong, right, is the insulin. Because when a diabetic is crashing, you don't give them insulin, you give them sugar. And so that's it. Mm-hmm. Like that's it.
My thought was whatever was in the special tube, like she had a different set of vials, like, oh, give me that one. I was like, okay, whatever that is.
So the bag is supposed to have sugar tablets and insulin.
Okay,
that's the diabetic bag. I appreciate the effort, the fact that she has to like wait for them to go back downstairs and then traverse this precarious fucking scenario. And then not only does she have to do that, but she has to. So the one thing I did read, that scene where she throws the fucking bag into the panic room while they're in the panic room and she's outside, 103 takes. 103 takes.
Oh man.
To nail that. That's commitment. That's serious filmmaking. I want to put that out there. And I also want to say, I totally forgot that fucking Dwight Yoakam is in Sling Blade.
Okay.
So he did have an acting career prior to this, but this role, to me, just it
also
stood out.
He does what 75% of it in the hockey ski mask, like a ski mask thing. I'll say this: my other piece, though I thought the first half was meticulously well put together and great, I do feel as it kind of winds its way into the last 30, it becomes a little more procedural, a little more by the numbers, and I don't know if that's just losing steam and direction, if that's studio meddling. I don't know what it is, but I do feel the last 30, or it's just over. It's so much of a thing that just by human nature's diminishing rate of returns by the last 30 minutes. Or is it
just like how do you wrap this up when it's so confined to a single space?
Yeah, and to give credit, one of our complaints with Fincher in the past is his films do tend to drag and move a bit too long. He could cut a good 15 or 20 minutes. I don't see really anywhere
clocks in at under 2 hours. This is like
exactly. So there's nowhere. I don't. That being said, I don't see there's anything to cut from the film either.
I would,
except maybe the post scene at the end in Central Park. Maybe but that saves you.
I would cut out the father. He serves a little bit of a purpose, but it seems a little more of like a device to move the plot forward versus like he shows up conveniently.
Okay, this is the part of the podcast that you are probably used to by now, where I pop in and I tell you what went wrong with the audio and what you missed. What's interesting is we didn't lose a lot of audio. We just lost little pockets of audio, typically 2 minutes here, 4 minutes here, nothing of great length. But what's tragic is the audio we did lose were in pivotal points in our podcast. So, for example, when I cut in earlier, it was right before our vote for the game as to whether or not it's one of the greats. This is what just happened too for Panic Room. We wrap up our conversation about the father, that an idea that JV brought up, and we talk about it for a few minutes, and then we vote. And then again, the audio cuts out. So to fill us in on those two mysteries, for those of you playing along at home at the Greatest Movies of All Time podcast home game, the game received a unanimous vote of not great. We still agreed it was a great film, definitely worth watching, but just not one of the greats. Myself and Gabriel both commented how we came into this podcast or even this Fincher series thinking the game was one of his best, one of our favorites, and it just didn't feel that way upon watching it under a different lens. As for the Panic Room, that received a 2-1 vote. 2 votes not great, 1 vote great. Myself and JB were on the not great front, and Gabriel gave it a vote of great. But since it was not a majority, it remains as one of the not greatest movies of all time instead of one of the greats. All right, following our vote, we then segued over to our end of podcast game. Each episode, we end with a game inspired by the films we've discussed for that particular episode. There's always some level of absurdity within our game, some level of trivia, some level of skill. Who knows? Random chance. For this particular game, we turn to letterboxd.com. For those of you who do not know, letterboxd.com is a movie review website. It is user-generated. So it's sort of a social media style approach. Individuals can create an account. You can keep track of the movies you've been watching that you want to see. You can write reviews, and then you can rate movies on a star meter from 0 to 5 stars. Here at the Greatest Movies of All Time podcast, we have a Letterboxd account at letterboxd.com/greatestmovies. You can check us out and follow us there. We keep tabs on all the things we talk about on the podcast. But for this episode, we wanted to turn to the users out there and to see what they felt about the Fincher films we have been discussing. So we pulled the star reviews for the star ratings for Seven, The Game, Fight Club, and Panic Room. We knew going into the bet that Fight Club had a star rating of 4.3 stars, but we did not know what the other ratings were. So each of us, we took a guess on what we thought the star rating might be, the user review star rating might be. And then we ranked, based on those numbers, we ranked those in order. What do we think the highest rated movie would be in the Fincher, first 4 Fincher films? What would be the lowest? So that was kind of element 1 of the bet. Element 2 was we wanted to get an overall score, like an average you would get on a test or a class. So we added up our star review numbers. We multiplied it by 5, so we would get a number somewhere under 100. So each of us came up with a number, and that's where the podcast kicks back in, where you hear us discussing our overall score. We list the rankings we have of the films, and then we list our overall score that we each came up with based on our little formula we created. And so there we hear that, and then I'll let us hear that real quick, and then I'm going to jump right back in because sadly we miss a lot of the back and forth of unveiling what each film received. I'm not going to go through and say what each film got by the user reviews. You can go look that up at letterboxd.com if you really want to see. But we'll hear what we set up for our bet, for our little game, and then I'll jump back in and we'll talk about the results a bit. And then we are lucky enough that we do see how the game ends up and resolves, because there is a little bit of some drama following the initial reveal of the scores. So I'll see you guys in a moment.
Lee is going to share us the answers one by one from lowest rated to highest rated of the Finchers. You already have this data in front of you.
I do.
If you have a tie, then you have a tie. We'll count that as like whatever place that falls in. So go ahead and rank your movies from lowest to highest.
And these are fan scores, not.
These are
All right.
not. These are people who sign up for Letterboxd.com and keep track of their thing and feel like they need to write a review about this movie
People
and
like
give it
Jesse.
stars. I don't
Gross.
currently. I don't rate the movies or write reviews on
I'm just
Letterboxd.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Don't have the time.
You're on Letterboxd.
So what
Leave us
we
a
need-
review.
I'm making some adjustments here based on a recalibration of.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean,
it's okay. These bets are never. They're never simple.
I felt good at the start, and then I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. All right.
All right. So what I'll need from you gentlemen in a minute. I don't really care at this point about your individual star score.
Ouch.
All I really need from you that we'll share on the camera is your ranking of the films from lowest rated to highest rated on the user scores and your final number, your final overall number. We'll share in those, and then I'll tell you how we get our answers. Because there's going to be some more, your number might not be your final number.
My phone does not like me trying to do complex math.
It's not too complex.
I know.
but it's just confusing enough that when I was daydreaming this bet, I'm like, oh, this is gonna have some good multiple layers to it that keeps us on our toes.
Do you want us to plot it on a graph?
We'll do a box and whisker later, but for now, box and whisker plot.
Yeah,
that's my favorite type of graph.
Let's do it.
All right, so JB, Gabriel, do you guys have your movies ranked from highest to lowest and your final number?
Aye, Captain.
On a scale of, all right, let's go ahead and share it so we have it, so everybody kind of knows integrity and honesty. I have my final number is going to be an 84. I think
mine is an 84.5.
Okay, 84.5, and I have 7 as the highest rated, followed by Fight Club, Panic Room, and The Game.
So I have 7 and Fight Club rated the same.
All right, so we're going to give those as first place for you.
The Game third and Panic Room fourth.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. And JB, tell the listeners what you got.
Dear listeners, I have 80.4. I got the
80.
Yep. And then, the pattern I chose was eliminating the word the. I ranked them from lowest to highest using the number of letters in their name.
Listen, guys, JB's trying to get on the board. Anything that works. So what is your lowest rated?
Game. 4 letters, right?
So the Game.
And then 7 comes up next with 5. And then we got Panic Room with 9 letters and Fight Club with 9 letters. Fight Club and then Panic Room, actually. Panic Room's the highest.
Your logic is sound, JB. You've really...
the pattern didn't appear until after I made it, but that's how the best patterns form.
Okay, so to recap, I have an 84. Gabriel, you have an 84.5. Did I get that right?
That is correct.
And JB, you have an 80.5.
0.4.
I can't believe...
0.5. You're right. I just can't do math.
Oh, 0.5?
I can't believe we landed at 0.5 points.
All right, so see, everybody's happy. They're a little confused about how the game works because that's how the games always happen. There's a little bit of confusion in the absurdity. But everybody's happy. We got our scores in line. Myself and Gabriel were about 0.5 away from our overall score. JB is a little further down, but not far off. We're all in the same ballpark here. And then again, boom, bad audio. It takes us a few minutes. Lee is there to help us as she pops in sometimes. For those of you who've listened to previous episodes, know that she is here to help us through some of our bets to keep our integrity in check. And I wish I had this audio for you. It was a lot of back and forth. There were some elements in there, some surprises, some points earned for the rankings, some points earned for the overall score, points earned for guessing the individual star ratings. And all you really need to know when it came down to it, there was a tie between Gabriel and JB. So we're about to turn to the tiebreaker audio. Under protest by Gabriel, we brought in the user review score for Alien 3. Those of you know your Fincher backstory know that there's a lot of debate on his role within this film, his personal feelings towards the film, but at the end of the day, on the historical record, he is the director. So for the tiebreaker, Gabriel and JB were tasked with picking or guessing, I guess I would say. They were asked to guess or predict what they thought the user star review rating average was for Alien 3. And that's where we pick up. We hear the conclusion of the episode. We hear the winner. And then the last few minutes of the podcast are fine. And that's that. So thank you for that. Thank you for listening. I'm going to let the podcast resume, and the next episode will be free of these audio headaches. So you have those other Fincher scores in front of you, gentlemen, of 7, Fight Club, Panic Room, The Game. Where are we at? JB, do you have a number? I think you do. Don't show us yet. I don't know if Gabriel's ready. Is Gabriel ready?
I'm not ready. I'm still trying to process where we are and what we've established, and my take on Alien 3.
Alien 3,
which is maybe the worst film in the Alien.
I don't know that the fourth Alien, which again another conversation another day.
No,
Joss Whedon was involved with.
That's fair.
not the greatest either.
Oh wow!
Alien 3 coming off
It's-
the high expectations of James Cameron's
and so
Aliens.
I'm rating this based on a scale of 0.5 to 5.
Yep, and it's based on solely the opinions of the Letterboxd community and those who give it the ratings.
It's be a great moment for our sponsor Brooklyn to chime in with a little bit of
Brooklyn,
little AdWords.
you know, sheets for people sleeping.
And again, I'll tell you this, as you probably noticed in the other scores, they range from anywhere. You know, it's a.
Can I pick a random? Does it have to be a 0.5?
No, that's what I'm trying to say. It can range as you noticed from.
Yeah, because 0.3 or 0.4.
Yeah, Fight Club is 0.3. It's just.
All right, I got one. I got it. I feel.
All right, let's hear your answers, gentlemen. Hold them up and read them.
3.7.
3.7. Gabriel, Alien
2.2.
2.2.
I think I remember what it was.
Lee, what is your memory
I think
of the score?
Is it a 2.9?
It is a 2.9.
How am I getting fucking robbed? I'm getting robbed after an outstanding performance.
That's how it works.
That's how it works.
Man.
JB, congratulations on your first win in a bet. I think this one's going to be
That's the
debated.
second win, right?
It was my first
JB's
win.
First.
Oh wow! All right.
I think it's going to be debated by some, but I
Man,
feel we followed.
I'm passing on this.
It's gonna go down in the canon of one of the not greats, maybe.
I feel we followed the rule book to a T.
The rule book.
Yeah. The book.
Before
The rule
JB,
book is formed
Right. Yeah.
in real time with real people.
I'm glad Alien happened.
Justice.
As Lee pointed out, we did have a discussion
We
about
did.
should
About
Alien
Alien.
3 be included in the bet or not. She said no. And so that's why it's perfect to bring it in for the tie. Before we jump into your into the show responsibilities, JB, quick question. This can be just a yes or no answer, no explanation. Have you seen Alien 3?
No.
All right, I didn't think so. Okay.
I own the Alien quadrilogy. I've seen all of the Alien films.
All right.
This just feels very unfair
I
to
don't think
me.
I've seen it either.
I figured that was your response,
unfair.
JB. All right, so JB.
I have a very harsh response to this. I'm gonna lock that away for another day.
I love it. As all listeners, you can email your feelings on this matter to greatestmoviespodcast@gmail.com. JB, first, before we move on, are there any films, either the game or the Panic Room, that you would like to save for a review at a later date?
Yeah, I'll save the Panic Room.
Oh, look at that. What a gentleman. What
I'll
a
save
gentleman.
the Panic Room.
Okay, so the Panic Room joins the ranks of the Lighthouse to be put in a greats purgatory to be discussed at a later date.
That's JB. I really appreciate that because that is what I would have used my time to do.
All right, which was Gabriel stakes in this. And to end, it's been a fun ride in this bets department today in a conversation about David Fincher films. But you do get to end the podcast with your final words.
Final words. What are words? I really don't have much to say. I didn't plan for this. Never in a million years did I think I'd win. Gabriel definitely had the upper hand. Moral of the story is don't watch movies. Join a podcast about movies. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening or daytime or whatever hour you're listening to this. It's been good. Cue the music.
All right, thank you. It's been real.